and Mary Pat. Hi, everybody. Returned it. Thank you. Oh, I missed you too. That's sweet. John, I'm really appreciating the hat. That's amazing. I love it. So, Jim and Mary Pat had so much fun presenting to you the last time that they went back to England to bring more stories. Does that work? Yeah. All right. Enjoy. Thank you.
Because you made us do that.
Oh, we made you? Okay. Thank you. I forgot we have 2 of these. How fun.
Look at this room full of people that want to watch someone else's vacation slides again. It's unbelievable that people do that. But
And we're not family.
and we're not family, no. Yep, we went back to England over Memorial Day, just before Memorial Day last May, and Debbie said, "Do you think you'd do another presentation?" And how can you say no to Debbie, right? So this time we kind of knew that we were going to do this, so we took pictures a little differently. So we hope we don't put you to sleep this time. This is last time when we just were in London proper, the city. We called it the Mind the Gap tour because I got a kick out of the fact you saw that everywhere. When you stepped off the subway, and announcements on the subway, they didn't want you to fall into that gap between the subway and the platform. But this time we went to London to start with, but we went up to the north, only 30-40 miles north of London, where the countryside exists, and it's a very marked difference from city to countryside. You'll see that. So this one's called the Mind Your Head tour. And you'll see why later on. This is version 2, okay? Mary Pat is the travel agent, by the way. I have no one to thank but her for getting this all done and in a wonderful manner.
My excellent travel companion.
Well, Picasso has a 3rd sense, a 5th sense, 6th sense. There it is. He knows when we're going, and that's my backpack. Please don't go. Please don't go. And then he got in my suitcase. And I think, remember, just before we did this, there was a story about they found the cat in the scan.
That's right, yeah. Yep. Somebody had accidentally zipped the suitcase and the cat had gone to sleep in the pack. Yeah.
Well, he didn't get to go. We found him in time. But this is what getting up at 3 in the morning gets you. 3 in the morning, Logan Express. I think we were in there by 4:30 a.m. and we were it. We were it. That's Terminal E.
Yeah, yep.
What time was your flight?
Flight literally was
7:20, I think it was. Yeah.
Well,
they tell you 3 hours to be there 3 hours.
Yeah.
So obviously.
The guidance is be there 3 hours before your flight leaves. And so then we must have fallen asleep because we were number 3 and 4 in the security line. So there is some value in getting up early. No lines. And so we had breakfast with Mark Wahlberg and his brothers. They were keeping you company there. He wanted to know, we're 3,280 miles from London. Yeah. And so the big British Airways liner was waiting for us. I think that's a 787. Direct. Boston to Heathrow.
5.5 hours, yeah.
How long?
5.5.
That's not really too bad.
Not bad at all.
British Air is a wonderful airline. It's clean and
Was it
you don't
full?
have to pay for anything.
It was fairly full, yeah, both ways. It was very near full, I would say. Yep.
What time did you arrive there? If you left here in the morning?
6 o'clock at night.
She's
Yep,
very
it's about
wise. She said we should take
hours,
these
yeah.
morning flights. It costs you getting up early, But when you're there at the right time to have dinner and go to sleep,
sleep.
At their time.
Don't have to sleep on the airplane.
Right. And so I did have to use the facilities once, but I got a kick out of this. There's an ashtray down there on the door. And of course, there's no smoking on airliners. So why in the world do they put that there? I don't know.
Unless our plane is 35 years old.
Not that one, it isn't. And we're at 39,000 feet there, going 480 knots over the ground, much faster than that probably. Well, that might be ground speed. But then here's London in the distance, right? And all the names that are similar to here: Bangor, Belfast. There's a Belfast in Maine, and of course Swansea. So, and that's the coast of Ireland there. So we're getting there, and the names continue. We're on
the underground at this
Right.
point. Yeah, leaving the airport.
So that's an underground, a subway stop, Boston Manor. Are you supposed to be doing
Neighborhood.
this, or am I taking
No.
over?
I'm just commenting.
And we had 2 nights at the Coach and Horses Hotel and pub. You're going to hear pub a lot. And wonderful. It's in the west side of the city of London proper. And right at the edge of Kew Gardens, Kew Gardens. And just as Mary Pat says, once you're there, you don't need to have a car in the city. We walked to Kew Gardens. It was 5 minutes away. It's great. The weather was very good. Yeah, this is late May. And
All these places are so cozy inside, right? All those pubs are old buildings.
so we had the arrival meal and beverage there it looks like a library there at the Coach and Horses Hotel.
But there you can kind of see it's still not quite dark yet. Yeah, by the time we got there. So we're all on the same day. It
Yeah,
was a Saturday.
right.
What are you drinking?
What am I drinking was the question for the audience at home.
He was waiting for you to ask that.
We are fans of Tanqueray Gin and Fever Tree Tonic Water. Fever Tree Tonic Water is made in London. And now we have it in the fridge at home by the 4-pack. Honestly, it's great.
They have these great new flavored tonic waters and flavored gins too. There's this one was Sevilla. It's like slightly orange. It's very refreshing. Yeah. You can get it now at Wines and More in the Walpole Mall.
And we buy it by the case. Shoot.
Okay, so we did spend we took a day in London, and to sort of get acclimated to the time before we left town. And so we when we had been there in the winter, I saw this Kew Gardens and said, "Oh, I'd love to go there, but you can't really go there in the winter." So this seemed like a logical thing to do when we came back in the spring. And this is the Victoria Gate to Kew Gardens, and you can see this was like the wisteria was blooming, and it's everywhere there, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, it was just draped all over this archway, really pretty. So Kew Gardens is actually this is Kew Palace. So the garden is a botanical garden, but on the one edge of it is this is the smallest of the royal palaces, and this is still technically a royal palace, but this was built in the 1600s, was called the Dutch House because it was built by a Dutch merchant, and it's really just brick, and it's painted this color, so you can't quite tell. It's all Flemish bond. But this was kind of on the edge of the property of Richmond Palace in the 1600s when it was built. And in the 1700s, Richmond Palace was sort of extended into the area that became the Kew Exotic Garden. And this home was bought by the Crown, I guess you would say, was by by George the Third. And this was sort of their home outside the palace at the time. And this is sort of in London proper right now. At the time, it was kind of on the outskirts. It was like the suburbs. So this was where they raised their children. They had like 15 children. So you needed all those rooms, yeah. And most of them survived to adulthood too, which is really something in those days. And they spent summers here and so forth. And so you were allowed to go in the palace, which we did, but you weren't allowed to take pictures in there. But it's decorated kind of as it would be in the 1700s. So George III, this was sort of part of our colonial history, right? This was all right around the time of the American Revolution. This was happening. And so this is the backside of the palace and the formal garden. It's got that nice formal garden and hornbeam trees on the side, this nice little pathway, very English, right? And this was sort of what's called a queen's garden, but it's really kind of medicinal herbs and so forth. But the really neat thing in here was this, you can see just a little bit, there's an iron archway all around this whole garden. And it was covered with this, it's called laburnum, Laburum. And this, I'd never seen it before. It was really stunning, so we couldn't help but take some pictures. Everybody was taking a picture of what they looked like under the archway full of laburnum. And so there's also, so the Kew Exotic Garden was kind of a resting place or a place, it's an arboretum really. It's not just a botanical garden or a flower garden. This is an oriental plane tree with a sort of an unusual, from Asia, unusual shaped leaves and these little spiky fruits on it. And you can get a sense of how big that thing is. Maybe you can see the person behind it. But the plaque on this says that this is thought to have originated, sometime this is as old as the 1700s when this tree was young. Owned by the Duke of Argyll, and he had an arboretum, and that was sort of the thing, right? In the colonial times, they were bringing back animals and plants from all these colonial investigations and all the colonies and bringing them to England, and people would collect these things as sort of the empire, the reach of the British Empire. So this was moved to the Kew property in the 1700s. So it's sort of already that old. And I think that's, one thing we were surprised by, the size of some of the trees. We'll talk about that more later. This is the palm house in the Kew Garden. And you can see that we're early spring, so the formal plantings are still pretty little. But the palm house itself is, so 1840, this whole property, the exotic garden, was commissioned as a national botanical garden. And shortly thereafter, this was built. Wrought iron, it was the first effort ever to build something architecturally out of wrought iron. And all the glass panels in there were hand blown. So this is finished in 1844. They think it's the most significant Victorian glass and iron structure that's still around. And interestingly, because if the shape of it was actually designed by ship architects, because nobody had done anything like this before, and this was sort of the closest thing they could come to thinking about this, which is why the whole building sort of looks like an upside down ship. They sort of had that in mind. So this is a tropical greenhouse right now and houses lots of palm trees and so forth. But it's really pretty structure. So this is being early in the year. There wasn't actually an awful lot of stuff blooming, but there was a lot of things for sale. I just thought the display of things for sale was so pretty I had to take a picture. I didn't think I could get away with bringing any of that home. But this was just along the garden pathways, some of the flowers that were blooming, but the big hit was the roses. And so the roses were just starting to bloom. This one was so neat because it's so pure white, but you see the buds up above it? They're absolutely red. Yeah, stunning red. And then they open up pure white. It's really pretty. Just some of the other there was just an assortment of varieties. This yellow rose that was sort of a rambler, just full of flowers. And I'll end this is sort of end Kew Gardens
Always
with
right.
the size of this tree. Like I said, we were kind of astounded. This is me standing under the tree. You know, I thought we were in England. They cut all those old trees down for firewood a long time ago, but that's not the case. And you'll see a couple more examples of that, where there were just some enormous old trees. It was really pretty. So that was our day in Kew Gardens. I'll hand it back over to Jim. This is sort of, do you want to? Okay. So this is just a little illustration of exactly where we did go. And you see, we were not very far from London, really. And we used just about every mode of transportation possible but boat. We should have figured that in. So we flew to London. We took a bus, the underground and the bus to Richmond, where Kew Gardens is. Now we're going to take the underground up to the St. Pancras train station, where we took a train out to the town of Luton so we could rent a car outside the city and not have to drive in the city. And then we drove west towards Oxford, did some touring around there, including a bicycle tour that you can't really see up there, up in the Cotswolds. We'll show you some pictures from that. And we came back east to the Cambridge area, just south of Cambridge, a little town called Nuthampstead. We did some walking in that region and then just kind of reversed course to go home. So this is sort of, I'll let Jim take it from here. Now that was after our day in London.
Yeah, that's a train station. That's St. Pancras train station. Yep. And so we took a bus to here.
No, we were on the underground to come up to here.
See,
Yep.
I was there, really. I was. But this is it's called an international train station. You told me that you can go to Belgium and across the channel
France, yeah.
from this station. But yeah, rather ornate, right? The train is. Yeah. Well, I guess it's a hotel as well. But just wow. That doesn't, I mean, South Station's nice, but hey. Curved, the whole end of it's curved. It was a bustling place, I will say that. And there's the inside. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's the back of that front building is this kind of modern-looking train shed. Actually, two stories of trains coming in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
2 levels of trains. And we did take the train up to the little town of Luton, where there's another smaller airport, and we rented a car. That is a Skoda, Skoda, made in Czechoslovakia. And its engine is 2/3 the size of my motorcycle engine. I think that's a 1-liter engine in that thing. And jumped to the end. It kept track of the mileage. I got 55 miles to the gallon on the week there. Yeah. The company's owned by Volkswagen, but it's made in Czechoslovakia. But it looks modern. It looks like a... There's your hero. Sitting on the right side, and we're going to drive on the left side of the road, and I'm shifting. That's a standard. I'm going to shift with my left hand. So everything is backwards. And it took a day to get my brain in gear of how to do this easily. And Mary Pat and I had a pact. We would both look at an intersection, both look both ways, and coach each other on which lane we were going to pull out and into. It took that. It took that thinking to get your brain going. So we only had one oops moment where she drew in some air in a hurry. Oops. And here's some homework we should have done before we went. These are road signs in England. And wow.
Nothing that looks like a road sign here.
Imagine coming up onto the top left one there. It tells you what's going on at the rotary there. And you're driving on the wrong side of the road, going around the rotary clockwise, and then you have to figure out what the heck where am I where am I going? And there's 2 lanes around the rotary, an in and an out, an inner and
The
an
roundabout.
outer. A roundabout. Sorry, that's right. You're right. So what's the bottom one there?
Soft shoulder. Warning, soft shoulder. The funny thing is, too, you almost never saw a stop sign. It's almost always a give way. How polite. Right.
No, doesn't mean
doesn't.
stop. As she said, almost didn't see a stop sign or a red light.
Or a light. Everything was a roundabout. There's almost no intersections. It's almost all roundabouts, yeah. End of the 30-mile-an-hour zone. Yeah. Because we have a 20-mile-an-hour zone. This one's a kind of an odd one you wouldn't guess. Resume the national speed limit. So I guess that means like the end of the restriction. The U-turn is pointed the wrong way.
Yeah, backwards
right?
there, right?
Give way to oncoming traffic is kind of pointed the wrong way also.
For us, yeah.
The 2 cars. There's no passing.
Yeah, wow, I said that.
No stopping, no waiting, no. Yeah, we should have taken a course. We never got stopped by the police. I don't know.
But off we go.
They're probably still looking for us.
And when you get out of London into the hinterlands, it's many roads that look like that. That's a 2-lane road. That's a 2-lane road in the Woodstock area. Were we at Woodstock by then? Yeah, so yeah, two-way traffic here.
Here we are driving a public 2-way street road in Nuthampstead. Yep. Lots of roads like this. If somebody else comes the other way like they just did, you gotta get yourself over. Just like that. Don't go too fast. You never know what's
You see
around
why
next
there's these pullovers all over the place.
hedgerow
And this
on the side
hedgerow
here.
is very common in the countryside. It was sort of planted to
Marks
delineate
almost all the
fields.
fields around here.
But it kind of, in many places, you can
Hawthorne.
see where it would be very
Jasmine
hard to
thorns on
widen
it.
the
That'll
road.
keep you out.
So they just make little turnouts every so often so you can pass each other. But everybody's very polite, over there. So we never
Yeah,
had
it doesn't
any
show
trouble.
here, but often there's dirt areas because the grass is all run over so many times. And that's kind of where you figure out to pull over and wait for the guy coming. But if you need to, like we just did, you go right into the grass. Our destination for the second hotel of the stay was the Woodstock Arms Hotel in the little town of Woodstock, England. I hear Joyce saying Green King. Green King is a conglomerate that owns several pubs and hotels. So this is a Green King pub. They advertise that. Very old. Do you know how old? I don't remember.
No, I don't.
No. But there's a pub. First thing we get to. We're fans of that. And there's a little variation of the mind your head. Nobody gets out sober. It's right there. So that. Nope. The car was parked right out front. And we checked in with that guy. The bartender checked us in. And then said, your room's up there. So we went up there.
I think there were only 5 rooms in the whole place.
Yeah.
2 floors. 2 floors.
Two floors of rooms, three floors of building, right? Because we were in, by the way, please mind your head, right? as we go up the stairs to our room. Yeah, there it is, a little clearer. And there's the
penthouse.
lonely writer's garret on the third floor. It's both ceilings are peaked. We are in the peak of the building with the one little double window opening. Very nice though. And we looked out over the courtyard out back there, which is their outdoor dining area. And stone buildings from the 1500s. I don't know, at least, yeah, probably, yeah. Just history that we don't have here quite. Just a shot of the courtyard advertising. A little three-wheel car parked in there. I don't know how it gets out. It's just they're using it like a storage shed. Yeah. And there's our, yes, again, that's a Tanqueray and tonic. And that's our room up there above the umbrella. All good. Woodstock, England.
Drinks are getting bigger.
The drinks are getting bigger.
No, you think so?
Sometimes there's more than one.
So one of the activities that we did, thanks to Google Maps, boy, I tell you, you can plan a whole trip on Google Maps. Just look at the map and things pop up and say, hey, that looks interesting. And one of the things that you said, hey, that looks interesting, the Cotswolds e-bike tours. So we went biking in the Cotswolds. But e-bike is an important distinction. If you've never been on one, I encourage you to try it, because even we did no biking ahead of going on this tour, but we were successful anyway. The Cotswolds is an area that was sort of famous for sheep farming and wool production, and it was for thousands of years. It was very a lot of pastures, rolling hills, and it's in a way analogous maybe now to, you would say, like the Berkshires in Massachusetts. There's a lot of people who have a lot of money in the city have a summer home in the Cotswolds. It's very pretty, draws a lot of tourist traffic, and so this fellow, who is a retired school teacher, Peter, right up there, who grew up in this area, knows all the back roads, knows all the people, knows all the little towns and the shops. Peter runs these bike tours. He takes up to 8 people. There were 5 of us in our group. We all had one of these little e-bikes with a little battery in it. All you have to do is pedal, and it just kind of gives you a little push along, and takes very little effort to go up and down all these hills. It was really amazing. So we gathered at Peter's house in the morning, and off we went, and this is sort of what it looked like, riding along these still narrow roads, but not much traffic though, so we really had very few encounters with cars. It really didn't feel at all unsafe. Here comes a few. And people were pretty respectful. We all rode in single file, and Peter would wait for us all to catch up every once in a while, but by and large, everybody stayed together. And it's very, very pretty, very peaceful. This was sort of a view out over some of the fields and the hills. We actually took a restricted bikeway as part of the trip here. We'll talk about right-of-ways later in the talk too, but you can see this restricted byway is this little path behind us here, where you can cycle or walk or ride a horse, but no cars. And so there's quite a network of this in England. So we took that little restricted byway and cut through from one road to another. And here you can see in the distance up on top of the hill a little village called Stow-on-the-Wold. And Stow-on-the-Wold has been there at least since the year 11, like the 1100s. I think 11, the 1100s. At least that's how old the church is.
I believe he told us that home, go back one, that house is owned by John Entwistle.
No, you're in the wrong place.
I'm in the wrong place,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's the church up there. I think that. Oh, that one? No, but yeah, but it's in the. You're right about the person, but it's in the wrong place. Sorry. So we did bike ourselves up to Stow-on-the-Wold, and we parked our bikes on the little village green here, and this is sort of a view of. I got a couple shots of what this little town looks like. It's the Cotswolds region in general is very. It's all built out of limestone. So it looks a little bit cold and barren, in fact, but it's kind of a very iconic look, and everything is kind of settled a bit. Everything's very crooked. These houses are a couple hundred years old, and yeah, everything is stone. But we were there. Actually, we were there not long after the coronation. It was only about 3 weeks after the King Charles coronation. So many places still had their buntings out. The Union Jack buntings, very patriotic. We had a little break in this little tea room. There's Jim walking in front of it. It's very crooked. It's not the picture. It's actually the building. And a lot of these places also had stone roofs. So this is that church tower that you could see there when we were way off in the distance. And this also a stone roof. And I got a close-up of a stone roof coming up. But this church was built in between the 1100s and the 1300s. So that's sort of over 200 years. It was sort of assembled and was really, was just really very pretty. It's amazing when you think, how did they do that long ago? And hauling all that stone up to the roof. I mean, it's limestone. It's all limestone, the buildings and the roofs. This is a door on this is sort of this is St. Edward's Church. And it's sort of well known for this particular door on the north side of the church, which is flanked by these two old yew trees. And if you think this sort of looks mystical almost, right, that's would be a good catch, because it's thought that door was the inspiration for J.R. Tolkien's Door of Durin in the book, The Fellowship of the Ring. He actually drew this sketch of what he imagined as the Door of Durin, and it's sort of reinterpreted like this. But Tolkien actually was a professor at Oxford for a while, and he, which is very close to this area, and his brother lived in this area, so it's known that he spent time up around here. So it's not inconceivable that this that he was actually here, and that this was sort of an inspiration for some of this. So we were there too. And stone walls, of course, were everywhere, blocking off all the sheep pens. And we did see a lot of sheep in the fields. And so midway through this, we stopped at a little local brewery, Donington Brewery. Yes, Bierfors. This was just out on the side of the road.
This is a guided tour. Our e-bike guy knows what to do, because this is lunchtime. A planned stop.
Yep,
Yeah,
they
I think
do.
only beer. Yeah.
And we bought a sandwich while we were in the little village there, and we packed them up. He packed them up in his pannier, and we rode off and found the brewery. And you can see there's the house and little greenhouse on the other side of it, and the storehouse here, and across the way, the brewery. And the thing that was really interesting about this is the brewery is powered entirely by a water wheel, which is one of the few, I think he said it was one of the few remaining working water wheels in England. It was just running all the time like this. There's the water chase on the left, but it was running at a pretty good clip. It was so pretty. And there was a little mill pond kind of between the brewery and the house. And I don't know, this is very informal. The brewery says on the side, "For beer sales, please come in and ask for Roger." That's between 8 and 4. Or visit our honesty box in the loading bay to your left. So we went to the honesty box and pulled out a few Cotswold Gold brews. And I think there was another one called Coronation, something about the Coronation.
That's right.
Coronation Ale.
Yes, they were good, and they're all gone. All gone. Yep.
But we did bring home a glass. And so we sat down at the picnic table there and we all had lunch. So that was our whole cycling group. And you can see, I mean, people were as old as we were. It wasn't like a bunch of young kids. Our bikes are in the background there. Were you going to say something? Okay. So this is just more pastures along the way. Oh, we stopped for lunch. We stopped for another break in a little town called the Slaughters, which really was related to the slaughter of the sheep. But this is a little inn that we went to. You can see, I was so taken with the wisteria and the laburnum all over everything. So pretty.
It was a bathroom break.
That's true.
Yes, mind your
it was
head
an
in
old
there.
building with a low ceiling, and we were glad we were short. You'd be ducking a lot in here.
They're serious. They're very serious here. Yeah, you saw the pad on one of those beams. It must be an exceptionally low one.
So this is just a few shots around this little town where you'll notice there's really no obvious electric wires. Everything's buried underground, although there were a few TV antennas. But just recently, this has actually been a set for a lot of movies. And most recently, they filmed Jane Austen's Emma that was done in 2020, was filmed in this little town. So this was sort of very like at eye level, but I thought this was interesting how uneven and worn down these limestone roofs are. I mean, limestone is really it's very degrades.
Yeah, it's soft, very soft.
Very soft. All with moss growing in. I can't imagine how heavy the roof is, but a lot of them still standing. So this is one more final view off over the hillside. Everything, very green this time of year. And that's the end of the bike tour. And Jim took this picture to show that we'd done over 23 miles by the end of the day. And you wouldn't know it. It's just
Well, my
e-bikes.
rear end knew it.
Well,
But yeah, she's right about this e-bike thing. It's great. It helps you go up hills. All you have to do is pretend to pedal. If your feet are moving and the pedals are moving, the thing is helping you. You don't have to push against the hill, so to speak.
So it was a tremendous way to take a bike tour.
It's a great
really.
way,
We saw an
yeah.
awful lot. And at the end of the day, we always managed to find a pub. We were back in Woodstock here, found the Back Lane, a local joint. Always a fireplace in the pub. It looks like I had tea, but Jim didn't. I can guarantee Jim did not have tea. And then, of course, there's always a guy with a dog in his lap at the pub. He's sitting here drinking with his little puppy. Oh, yeah, this is just a few shots around town, actually. More wisteria. This is Woodstock.
Go ahead. You want to roll. Yeah, just a street in Woodstock, just old-fashioned England, really something.
So are those homes? Do people live?
Those are homes. Yeah, those are homes. I guess you'd call them townhomes here. I think they own vertically. There's a door down and you go up. Yeah. That's a door in a church in Woodstock, and I think we were advised that might be 500 years old. The hand-hammered hinges, those are hinges, those scrolly things. It's just, think of the people that have gone through there. And that's Town Hall, Woodstock, England. Right in the middle of the town. The roads go either side of it. It's sort of at the point of a peninsula or an island there.
And again, I'm always surprised there's palm trees outside.
There-
Palm trees year round.
Yeah. So there's the door. They don't work too hard. They're open Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 1 at the town hall. I have a good friend that works at City Hall up in Bath, Maine, and I told him, you guys ought to get hours like this up there. That's a doctor's office, they call it. Yeah, that's a doctor's office. And here's a pharmacy. It says, please order your prescriptions in time. Please allow 5 working days for your prescription to be ready for ordering. So the pace of life is a little slower, I guess. And then it's open normal hours, I guess. Yeah. It's a small town. That's another pub. The name escapes me at the moment.
Punch Bowl.
Punch Bowl, yeah. So it's oops. Yeah, that's not right. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a gin and tonic, is it? No. Oops. That was in there, in the Punch Bowl. Yet another mind your head. So here's a little section of funny vehicles. We own a Volkswagen camper van, but a much newer version than that. So we're attracted to the the old Volkswagen campers. And that was in use, just running around the town of Woodstock. Beautiful shape is right. That's
What would the population be?
Oh, I would say no more than a couple thousand. It was a small town, yeah. I would say 3 blocks or 4 blocks in each direction.
And while we're on the subject, that's a Citroen panel truck. That's back at Kew Gardens, and they've modified it. The side goes up, and you can get a coffee or a donut or something out of it. I just thought they were cool-looking rigs, kind of a third world thing.
Didn't you say there's only a 1960 something?
Yeah,
or
those are
50
not
something?
old.
They're not that old.
They're not that old, but they're built like a tank, and they look like one. Yeah, they have 2 of those there. And then, yeah, that's a British something. It just parked there. I think it probably runs, but it attracts you to the coffee shop. Is that?
Tea room.
Tea room?
Yeah.
And back at St. Pancras, this was parked out front. That's a McLaren. It's a supercar. It's worth about $250,000. And it was out there just for the public to oogle at. And it was dirty. It was dusty, dirty. I don't know. Some people have too much money, I guess.
That's a Lagonda. 1930s Roadster?
Yeah.
Nice, or so?
Yeah.
That was actually on the road. That
That
was
yeah.
somebody had driven this here. Okay. And this was another thing. This was another reason we went to Woodstock. I don't know if any of you would recognize this palace. This is a palace that is technically the only palace not owned by the royal family. Next, I guess we do the slide. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. This is a view of it from the side. And if you need one more hint, here's a famous man associated with this palace. This is Blenheim, and this is Sir Winston Churchill, of course. He was actually born in Blenheim, although Blenheim Palace is owned by the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough, and they were given this land and dukedom and money to build this back in 1700, early 1700s by Queen Anne, because the Duke secured a victory at the Battle of Blenheim in Europe, and so this was his thanks. He was built this house. The common name of the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough, last name is Spencer Churchill. So Winston Churchill was a cousin of the Duke of Marlborough. Diana Spencer was a cousin of the Duke of Marlborough, all related. And so the Duke and Duchess owned this house. Churchill was born here, sort of accidentally, because his parents were visiting when he appeared on the scene. Here's a couple of tourists here. But he did visit this home frequently, too, and they did have an exhibit on him that I'll show you a little bit later. This is sort of a close-up of the portico there. It was a stunning, gorgeous day, which is not always, you don't always get them over there in England.
This is inside. This is a 3-story foyer. Of course, the place is filled with old portraits and beautiful art and beautiful plasterwork. This is actually looking up the 3-story entrance foyer at the ceiling. It was really amazing art. And then down the other side, this is now we're looking out the front door that had just come in there.
This is someone's house.
Yeah. So the first floor is sort of public spaces, and the public can go through. The second floor is private apartments, and they do still occupy this house for part of the year. So this is like some of the library and stuff in the public spaces is an old tapestry. And the cornice work and stuff is all gilt. It's a lot of gold leaf. And this is the library there, which was actually, for the age of the place, has a stunning collection of books. For in a time when wealthy people had books, and books were sort of a status symbol. A ton of books. This is a statue of Queen Anne that actually funded the place. The benefactor, and a little grand piano there. The ceiling in the library itself was also sort of a ballroom. It was just an enormous long hall. At one end of it was this beautiful organ right in the library. And the inlay work on this was really something. And they still play this. There's concerts every Sunday on this organ. One of the other really cool things, though, in this house, I'll just sort of go through these quick. Because it was a coronation year, which of course hasn't happened for a long time over there, they had a whole special display about the coronation and coronation robes, and this was all the different designs of robes worn by all the members of the peerage when they attend a coronation. So they had a whole thing about design of the robe and what it looks like, and if you're a duke versus a marquess versus an earl, and the different coronets you would wear if you're a duke versus a marquess. They're sort of very particular styles. I didn't realize all those things meant something. So there's rules to be followed, and this was interesting because just recently, Netflix did a series called The Crown. Maybe some of you've seen The Crown. And when they did that and recreated the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, they had to recreate all the clothing. And so these are the actual dresses that were recreated for the series by the Netflix costume group for the maids of honor that carried the train of the Queen. And so this is actually partly why this ended up in this house. Lady Rosemary Muir, or Rosemary Spencer Churchill, grew up in Blenheim Palace. She was one of the maids of honor at Queen Elizabeth's coronation. She's just a couple years younger than Queen Elizabeth was. I think that's her second from the left. And so the interesting thing is they used her actual gown as a model to recreate the costumes for the series. And here, as a thank you, they restored her gown. This is Rosemary, now Muir, just last year. She's in her 90s. She's still alive. And that's her actual dress that she wore at the coronation when she was part of Queen Elizabeth's coronation. I thought that was pretty neat. So connection to this house. This is the recreation of Queen Elizabeth's coronation gown, and it was just gorgeous. It was all beaded with flowers that were native to the different parts of England. Barbara?
Now that Spencer Churchill lady, is she related to Princess Diana?
Yes.
Diana.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. They're all, I don't know how distant, but they are all the same family. This is the purple train, and then the coronation robe, the gold robe that she wore right after she was crowned. And she walked out, so it was really something. So these aren't the actual clothes, but they're probably better looking than the actual clothes because they're brand new. So, okay, that's a little coffee break for
Yeah, we're in a rut here. There's gin and tonic in a can for lunch.
great pastries.
This is at Blenheim Palace.
Oh.
There's the esteemed Mr. Nolan back there.
Okay.
You hit the slideshow now.
How'd I do that? How do I get out of that?
I don't think you can undo it. But
Okay. So we went for a walk in the garden there, well, it wasn't really a garden; it was the woods. Did I do it again?
You hit the wrong button.
I know, but it won't go. It won't go now. Technical difficulties.
Paul Nolan, I blame you.
Right there. The pink one. Okay. Very good. Thank you. He fixes everything, isn't it amazing? So out walking in the it's actually sort of the hunting ground. So this is the one thing they still use this house for. They run a big hunt out of here every November, where they invite other landed gentry. And we did go on a downstairs tour here and saw the staging area for the hunting. But this was just blooming laurel in the woods there. Pheasant. There were some pheasants running around there. Of course, a game bird that's sort of in the hunting area. Again, the enormous trees. There's an even bigger one here. You can see Jim walking in front of this Atlas cedar. There were lots of them there too, and so yeah, really amazing. So out facing the garden on the first floor of the palace is this interesting room that was this is the garden terrace room that was painted up to to capture scenes from the Empire. It's all from the British Empire, and they had this kind of decorated up like Winston Churchill was there. His painting stuff, painting was his big hobby, and his bottle of scotch, and the porter chair that Jim snuck a seat in.
Not supposed to sit in that.
I don't think so. It was old. So by the time we left, we were very friendly with Sir Winston. And it looks like we found a pub.
Well, we got to eat, right? Yep. Dinner at the Pheasant. That place was loaded with people. We just went in and sat down, and I don't think we should have done that. I think we took the spot for someone that was waiting. I got a feeling that they let us stay, but we were ugly Americans that day. Yeah. And coincidentally, here's the pheasant from. Coincidentally, I have the shirt. We'll tell you why in a second. And off we go to our third and last place of staying overnight, if you will. This is the Woodman Inn. And it's in the town of Nothampstead, England. Mary Pat and I are both World War II history aficionados, and especially World War II aviation. So this is the site of an airfield built by the U.S. in the middle of World War II to first be a fighter base and then a bomber base to bring the war to the Germans. So Nothampstead was built out in back of this Woodman Inn. And the Woodman Inn has 2 guest rooms, and we had 1. 2 guest rooms, very, very well done. Nice, very nice. Ground floor, very accessible to the dining and drinking establishment. Yeah, the wallpaper was cool. Yeah, so there's the Woodman Inn at the end of that little road you saw a couple pictures ago. Thatched roof, of course. It's been there a little while. I'd say that's the 1880s by the close or so. I think it's a different thatched roof, but yeah, the Woodman Inn is a historic building out there in the village of Nothampstead, and it was determined the ground behind it was all fields, would be a great place to build an airbase. So there's a B-17. The 398th Bomb Group made that home from 1943 to 45 and hosted hundreds of U.S. Airmen, soldiers. They were at Army Air Corps at the time, and suffered 200 losses of crew members. These B-17s carried 10 men in the crew, and when they went down, 10 men's fate was decided. Original sign, Bomb Group headquarters there at the Woodman Inn. We're lucky enough to be staying at the Woodman. I guess I can read it. It was built on farmland. The runways were built, the base of the runways was built on rubble from the bombing of London. So they trucked the rubble and made the base for the concrete runways. And after this, well, getting ahead of myself, they tore up these runways eventually, returned it to fields, and the runway rubble was used to form the M1, the superhighways in England. So they keep reusing the same stuff. So the 55th Fighter Group arrived, and they called it Mud Hampstead, and you can see why. It's all very rich soil, but it holds the water pretty well. There they are, lined up for chow, I'm betting, in the Quonset hut there. So Mary Pat and I both think it's pretty cool to go where history has been before, and lucky she found this place. We had a little trepidation about what this would be like staying there, and it was probably the best thing we did of the whole week. The historical picture, how it used to be out and behind the Woodman Inn. 4 bomber squadrons with each 15 planes, I think, in a squadron, and they would do mass takeoffs, form up with other squadrons from other airfields, and fly south to England and fly south to France and Germany. Lots of history here. That's a B-17 still flying today. The Memphis Belle, yeah, it was used.
Isn't that in Oregon now?
Isn't it DC in the Smithsonian?
There may be one that doesn't fly. I think that there's a couple of them around still. Not many of them are actually flight worthy. I think they thought this might be the last one because one of them went down here in the U.S. when it was owned by the Collings Foundation just outside of Boston
Right.
here, and went down in Connecticut a couple years ago.
You can see there's a little different nose art on the other side of it. It was used in another movie. I don't know. That's Sally B there. So these were large units. These are 10-men crews, 2 pilots, bombardier, gunners, both right and left waist, and up on the top turret, and down below in the ball turret, and on the back in the tail gun, and a lot of brave. I'm afraid it's all men at the time, taking off in this in all kinds of weather, and many of them never made it back. Oops! Oh yeah. That gives you an idea of the size of it and how stout it is, right? I read the caption just last night. That's one squadron's group of personnel. So I think since there were 4 squadrons, there may have been 4 times that many people kind of associated with Nut Hampstead Airfield. I don't know if that's quite true, but that's a lot of people. There are people sitting and standing on the wings. A little schematic of the Nut Hampstead Airfield. Station 131 it's called. And yeah, the Woodman Inn is where the red dot is. So you can see the Woodman Inn played a big role for these guys, because when your mission is over and you've survived minus 40 degrees for 8 hours and you've survived death, and come back and unwind a bit at the Woodman Inn, right? Yeah, 1944 and present.
Yeah, this is we sort of started out on this quest because, like Jim said, we have this interest in all these. We've done some other finding old things associated with World War II and with Jim's dad's service, and so we were saying we were going to go to the Imperial War Museum and say, hey, there's got to be, these fields must have been all over the place in England. Where'd they all go? And actually kind of found this really just looking on Google Maps, because this is what it looks like today. And you can kind of tell that looks like it could have been an airfield, and sure enough, there was this little pub here, and that's what kind of led us to thinking to stay here. And that was, the tactical map in 1943 or 4, after they'd finished this, which was just farmland, and then they turned it back to farmland. Yeah, I mean, and it's there right in the middle. You wouldn't know all the things that happen. You're still not allowed to walk in this area that says bomb dump, ammunition dump, firing butts, all down in here. It's restricted still. But you can see this was the major runway right down the center there. Part of it's planted up as trees. Part of it's actually still a small local airstrip. There's still the control tower over here. The footprint for the repair building is right here. Some of this concrete is still all there. There's the little village of Nut Hampstead, which was kind of taken over for all sorts of military personnel. So it's really amazing. You said that you can find the footprint of this still around.
And so in the Woodman Inn, there's a few pictures of times past, and there's a crew at the bar at the Woodman Inn, and we like to think that we joined in where they were. How many years ago? 80 years ago? Another shot from the side. The Woodman Inn with the woodsman's axe up on the top, embedded in the little piece of firewood. And in that says 1968. It was featured in a country magazine. They had newspapers from the era behind plexiglass, and Mary Pat wanted to pilot comes home by paddle boat. The headlines of the day were all about,
down
of course,
4 Nazi planes.
Here's the present day. You just walk around and went out back of the Woodman Inn, and this is what's out there. That's a modern navigational aid over there, just going off the screen. But
yeah, it was a little breezy. That's kind of looking right down the runway there.
So if you've ever seen the movie or the TV show 12 O'Clock High, think of that, because it was a different place, fictional place, but very much like this. Still have a runway sign. Still have part of the runway.
Did you feel a little depressed?
No, I didn't. The question was, did we feel depressed? I'll speak for me. No, it was just too awesome. I know it's not everybody's thing, but we.
Sad. I mean,
Oh yes, there was some disasters here as well. Yeah, you're right. There's reason to be sad. Yeah. So it's memorialized, this Nut Hampstead airfield. The motto at the time, the 398th Bomb Group, was Hell from Heaven. And this monument is U.S. property. This piece of ground inside that hedge and up to where I'm standing is U.S. territory. The U.S. maintains this in perpetuity. I gather that you could say that you were still in the U.S. if you were standing right here. That much of it right there. Yes. Mr. Haynes.
Have you researched any of the destinations that the planes went out of in this particular field?
The question is, have I researched the destinations? Yes. The 398th Bomb Group has a large presence on the internet. I know the Schweinfurt ball bearing factories, but we'd have to look back in the history of each mission is delineated. You can find that out. Yeah, I don't know about these guys. We will get into that. We'll find out. And there's Mary Pat sitting in the U.S. on the bench there. Now the Woodman Inn is right beside me. I mean, this is all one concentrated little area. The 398th Bomb Group was part of the 8th Air Force, which is a larger group of, Air Force construction, if you will. Jill's husband, Dan, was an 8th Air Force guy. So the 8th Air Force continues. They had a museum there at the field and right behind the Woodman Inn. So the actually descendants of some of the crew members have created the museum.
Some of the crew
kids
members,
of the so that I'm sure this is officers' accommodations, right? Al, this is not the run-of-the-mill airman. And in fact, the Germans did find it at least once. That's a German bomb that was dropped on the field. One of 7 on the 19th of February, 1944. A total of 77 bombs were dropped by the Luftwaffe that night, but they didn't hit anybody. No. And Al, there you go. That's a D-Day flight mission. Nut Hampstead is up at the top. The black line goes straight down to the coast of France there. Yep. Apparently to Corseille, France, where they unloaded, and then the other loop is the way back home again. And if you haven't fallen asleep yet, I don't know if you can tell, that B-17 in the bottom has no nose left. German flak, which is artillery that goes up to 25,000 feet and explodes, entered the nose of that B-17 and blew up. And the pilot got it home. I'm afraid the navigator or the bombardier didn't get home. But incredible stories of heroism. I mean, that's truly heroic, I think. And the fellow up there, you had to fly 25 missions, and then you get to probably go home. The chances of that were slim. He flew 30, and he was shot down 3 times, twice over Europe, once over England. These guys all lived here at Nut Hampstead and probably drank at the Woodman Inn. Whoop, there's Sally B again. And in the Woodman Inn is a coffee shop, the 398 or something it's called. And we were lucky enough to be in there one morning, and the cops came in.
Imagine that, the cops showed up at a coffee shop. That's right, it's sort of the Dunkin' Donuts.
They were traveling together. They were what?
Constables.
The constables.
They're
essentially the community policing, because this is out in the countryside, and so they visit the little villages and see if everything's okay. And so they just stop in and shoot the breeze, and they were very nice. They talked to us, and when they learned we were Americans, the subject turned to the firearms debate over here. They do not understand us. They don't carry weapons. They 99.99% sure when they show up at a problem, there's not going to be something pointed at them. So
they carry tasers. He said, yeah, they have tasers.
We heard that more than from these guys. Other Britishers don't understand what we're up to here. They have a unit they can call if they need more help. They were great.
So the final segment here, we just wanted to say this was our last day. We actually went walking. And this is a thing. It's a very popular, they don't call it hiking, call it walking or hill walking if you're up in the mountains. It was sort of fascinating. I mean, we had already noticed as you're driving along a lot of the roadsides, frequently you'll see these signs along the side of the road, public footpath,
or footpath and some mileage marked or a town marked. And they're just these tiny little wooden signs. But it turns out, that public right-of-way is a big thing in England. And this sort of started in the 1800s as the country became more industrialized and land got parceled up into private, smaller parcels, and people's you couldn't access, you couldn't walk through to places that you used to be able to walk through because private landowners would stop people or put up fences. And so there were two acts, actually, one in 1949 and one that expanded the rights of public right-of-way in the year 2000. This is all pretty recent, that says anything that has been a passageway that walked by people for the last 20 years is deemed a public right-of-way. You cannot restrict, as a landowner, you cannot restrict people's passage across your land. And furthermore, any uncultivated parcel of land, basically all the hedgerows between fields are essentially public footpaths, and there's a whole requirement to map them out in a set of definitive maps, and this is everywhere except right within the city of London. So there are maps. You can see this. I think this one's, I don't think it's Google Maps, but somebody's map application that in red is marking all those little public footpaths around the town of Nuthampstead. And there were websites devoted to walking. We went on to Hertfordshire Walker, and picked a hike to do. Was that they're all a couple miles long, and this was sort of the green. It was sort of mapped out where you should walk, and what we actually did was the bit in yellow. But we started out walking down the taxiway of the old airfield, and then to the neighboring village of Anstey. And then just sort of made our way back to Nuthampstead. And so starting out walking, our British walk down the runway there, and this is the neighboring village. And this area of the country, so we're only about 50 miles away from where we started near Oxford in the Cotswolds. And construction of places was completely different here, like you were in another country. You don't see any stone out here. You see all these wooden homes with thatched roofs, and this one's in the town of Nuthampstead. And I read that the thatched roof lasts about 25 years. I mean, it's more than you would think, and you think, well, that must be ancient, but they're actually, they're fairly new, and they are kind of an art form, a lot of decoration in them. So many, many places are still thatched. You wouldn't think. I always thought that was sort of outdated.
John wonders what they do for heat, and I think it's modern heating plants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so in the town of Anstey, there was this little St. George's church, and this one, I think, was 100 years newer than the one in the Cotswolds. This one was built between the 1200s and the 1400s. And this was the door to the church. We went in. Unlike here, the churches are all open. You can always go in, and there's always a donation box, and this place it's just so old, but it's still the church in town. It's Church of England, as was the St. Edward's in the Cotswolds. And in all the pews, everybody makes their own little kneeler cushions. They're all kind of needlepoint cushions. Everybody has different patterns. They're all in the pews there. What was really fascinating in this one, they had a whole little thing about the handwritten thing about the bells in the church. So there are 6 bells in the bell tower there. The newest bell dates to 1798. The oldest bell goes back to 1500, was cast in 1500. There's one inscribed, God Save Our King, 1616. So yeah, these 6 bells are several hundred years old, and they're all still hanging up in the tower there of the church, and they're all still rung actively. They're advertising here, bell choir practice every Tuesday night. This was one of the windows in the church. The little inscription said that
this little piece here up in the upper right corner with the figure on it dated to pre-Reformation. Now the Reformation was like around 1550. So this little piece of glass was sort of preserved from the original glass in the church and when it was built in the 1200s to 1400s. This is a brand new window, actually. This one was commissioned to commemorate the airfield there, neighboring Nuthampstead, and inscribed in this window are the names of all 200 or so airmen that lost their lives, that were stationed at Nuthampstead and lost their lives. And in fact, one of the, there was an accident, a plane taking off from Nuthampstead, something went wrong, crashed right outside the church here. And they said, fortunately, none of the bombs in the plane exploded. So
Or there'd be no church.
Or there'd be no church. That's right. It was that close. So we found a pub on the walk. This one's the Blind Fiddler.
The Blind Fiddler with the shipyard beer from Portland, Maine, umbrellas out front. So that's their imported beer, Shipyard. Those guys were drinking shipyard beer, believe it or not. The Blind Fiddler, yeah.
Jim might have.
I had a Guinness.
That's out back there. Yeah, you can see, you're looking off to the distance, all the fields. So continuing on our walk. So we actually are on a public footpath here, and you can see that we're just walking between two pastures on somebody's private farm. There was actually a little metal gate you had to go in kind of to keep the animals from escaping. You had to go in and close it on the one side and open it on the other side. But this horse came right over. He was very interested to see us, and probably expected us to give him something to eat. Yep, so lots of little, just directional signs in town. We were headed now back on our way to Nuthampstead. The 30 mile, okay, there's your traffic question test, right? What does that sign mean?
2-lane road, remember?
It says 30 mile down to 30 miles an hour because it got curvy here. Yeah, and it is miles per hour. It's not kilometers. So it's a funny mix of things. Arriving back at the Woodman Inn there, and this was Sunday, our last day there. So Jim got a Sunday roast dinner, which is a thing all Sunday afternoon at any pub. What was it?
Yep, Sunday. That was roast pork, mashed potatoes. Roast potatoes, and
peas are ubiquitous.
Peas.
Peas are.
Peas. These peas look like peas. Usually they like to mash them up, and they call them smashed or mashed peas, and I can't get them down. But
Yorkshire pudding, yes, which is not a pudding at all. A pudding is a sort of a baked good, basically, and it's kind of like a sweet roll, really, and everything with a ton of gravy on it.
I almost a popover. Yeah. And someone had a salad back there. But look at the drink, right?
That's right. Had my tank right. So that was the last thing we did there, our Sunday roast dinner. So just a couple things we wanted to show you on our way home because, it's always you find something interesting, right? So we came back on the train into the St. Pancras train station again, and the subway we were going to take, the underground line we were going to take across town was closed for track work. So we had to find an alternate underground line, and so we took this one that was a little more expensive. It's called the Elizabeth line. Didn't know anything about this, and we didn't really even realize the significance of this until we got home and saw on PBS the Nova special about the London Super Tunnel, the Crossrail project, a new London Underground. It's the first time they've built a subway line in London in over 100 years. And this was a huge engineering effort, and they really did have all these machines and brand new tunnels right through the heart of the city. It was a multi-year project. I think the chief engineer on this was a woman, which was really cool. And this is what it looked like. It's very futuristic. And in fact, this is the wall. It's a wall. It's a glass wall until the train comes in, and then the doors open when the doors of the subway are open. So you cannot access the tracks until the train is actually, till the underground cars are actually in the station all computerized. They're driven by computer, scheduled by computer. It was really something. It was just dedicated last year. It was one of the last public things that Queen Elizabeth did. And they named this in her honor, the Elizabeth line. So yeah, it was kind of cool. We didn't realize the significance of it till we got home.
Maybe like last week we saw, we realized it. Oh, this is you.
Well, oh, just that, well, we both saw, I was the most fascinated by this, I have to say. Here we are at the airport. There was this thing called pod parking. You park your pod? What does that mean? Right? So pod parking is this little device. And we saw these, and actually, so this is a terminal at the airport. This is going to get your parked car. You don't have to wait for a bus. You don't have to like take a little underground shuttle. You just walk up to this terminal, put your credit card in, the door opens, and the best thing is probably just show the movie here because this is a treat. Here we are at the pod parking lot.
There's no one driving.
Rent yourself a pod to take off and take you to the parking on the other side of the airport. We could see these things running around the edge of the runway. Just these teeny little, that looks like a monorail car, and it's
Here we are.
It's a
at
private
the pod parking lot,
It's a private monorail.
where you can rent yourself a pod.
Time
Any
to go
time
home.
of day.
I can show that again and again if you want. Yeah, had to go home. So this time we fly afternoon in England and get home.
8 o'clock?
Eight-
9?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, didn't disrupt us too much. Now, because we had time to kill, and I'm an aviation geek, that's the air traffic around Heathrow. The blue stuff is inbound to Heathrow. Heathrow is LHR, the yellow letters there. The green ones are leaving, and the the blue ones are coming in, and you can see their airplane icons lined up all over the place. It's incredibly busy. In fact, they're all in the holds. All those ovals are holding. They're holding, going round and round, getting ready to be released to land. And British Air is great. You don't have to pay for anything. So they said, "Would you like a drink, sir?" And celebrated going home with an aviation gin and Schweppes tonic water, and pretzels. And the kiddies, they missed us, but they were there when we got back. So that's Picasso in white and Bootsy in black. They missed us. And that's one thing we imported back here. We brought back a Bobby. Stand up, Bobby. John Baker asked me more questions about this before we went and after we went, so he's the honorary community policeman around here. I'll tease you with this. We're going back again this winter. So you might be forced to do this again, but we both took plane rides above the countryside, and we left that out for you this time, but we'll be maybe sharing this. I did a bonehead thing. I had a whole video of me flying this from inside the plane, and I ruined it. I think we're going to try to recover the video, but that's a World War II trainer. Those guys that we talked about would have trained in this T6 here, and Mary Pat's a World War I aviator. Thank you for coming and enduring that. That's all.